Welcome back, everybody. It is the Working Brother back at you with another talk. We've got George McMillan III. George, you're unmuted now. You can talk. George, welcome.
Thank you, sir. May I have another?
Yeah, it's been a while. But as is always the case with George, there's a lot of other content to find here on the Working Brother channel, if it is the kind of thing you are into. White papers and bad jokes with George. This is a comedy channel. Everything we say here is a joke. Nothing has anything to do with reality. George, what are we going to get into today?
We're going to do the second part of the UBT because some people did like it. I didn't think anybody would like it. So, I did this a couple months ago. I really haven't looked at it since because I had to send it somewhere. So that's why I took a previous paper and brought it up to the latest methodological standards, what I was doing. But yeah, in this context of going over the unified behavioral theory or integrated causal model of the philosophical and social sciences, the purpose is, this is the solution set. The 7P plan was the problem set. Frankfurt School came in, they took the objective measures and standards out of the university system. And like Tupi and Kosmita said, for the people that read that article, it's Psychological Foundations of Culture. You can download it. It explains how the university system was taken over by the postmodernists. They abandoned the scientific project. They're writing from the field of evolutionary psychology. They want to know why once evolutionary biology and psychology gets to social psychology, the social sciences are a chaotic mess of logically incoherent. You can't call them theories because they're logically incoherent. It's just logically incoherent set of nonsense. It's just nonsense. So that's the problem set. The solution set is, if you just, like we're going to get into the second section, if you just take Lipsitz's correlation between democracy, government forms, economic growth indicators, and geopolitical status, third, second, or first world status, if you take that as your independent variable, dependent variable, and outcome measure system, you have 3/5 of a logically coherent integrated causal model of the social sciences. So my research project really just started with Lipsitz's work and built it out over 3 decades. I kept on taking different undergraduate syllabi I had and graduate school syllabi that I was given, and I kept on integrating them over a decades-long period, and then started meeting other people's criterias, Harsanyi and Gintis, that were trying to laterally integrate the disciplines, but they never got a research design, so they couldn't get the rest of it. It's like a research design is like getting the border of the puzzle and then putting the pieces of the puzzle together. So the pieces of the puzzle already existed. Getting the border of the puzzle and then learning how to arrange the different pieces coherently, that's the problem. So once I get a research design going, then I kept on, as I was building out my model in both directions, I kept on finding somebody else had schematized some part of the social sciences, and then you just got to fit it together with the rest of it right. Then slightly modify some stuff, and then it all absolutely goes together actually very easily. So we're going to get into that.
So conspiracy theories, basically, is what we're going to get into. That's all I got from you.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Where is that slide set that George has prepared with new fancy Russian-looking colors?
Well, I could do the.
No.
I have the other ones.
No, it's okay. This one's better.
And
This one's better. No, this one's better. Yeah, no, this one's better.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to check.
We're not gonna have blue and yellow.
I did do the other one as a joke.
The other one can only be a joke. So, should I do the British accent? Lipset's democracy, economic growth, and modernization sequence, the basis of 3 macro frameworks. This slide set explains the origins of the Cartesian-style model, emanating from Lipset's linkages between the concept of democracy and its relationship with levels of economic development in the process of transforming less developed countries into more developed countries. How lovely! Did you fall asleep, George?
Excuse me if I yawn as you talk.
Right, right. So, do you want to break that down into like something that's TikTok, 3-second attention span, like
a Cartesian model, independent, dependent variable in an outcome measure. A plus B equals C. How's that for TikTok language?
Wow, man. I think you're getting the hang of it. No, seriously speaking, let's click here and start scrolling. So we got say more Lipset.
Can you place that chart of the why all experts are Democrats? Can you post that up there real quick?
Democrat professors. There we go. Professors are Democrats. Therefore, experts are Democrats too. Communications, 100%. Anthropology, religion, sociology, art, music, theater, classics, geoscience, environmental, language, biology, philosophy, and now we're falling under 95% Democrat. History, psychology, political science, computer physics, even mathematics, professional economics, chemistry, and engineering, down at 61% Democrat professors.
Right. I want to break this chart down because it, like somebody in your chat said, this is a visual representation of the 7P plan. And currently, the U.S. Department of Education's budget has been going towards accelerating the 7P plan. So, yeah, the more they take the scientific projects out of the social sciences, the worse this gets. And I want to break it down because, like Alan Bloom was talking about it in Closing of the American Mind, for Americans, you can buy these books for, $5 or $10 a piece used off of Amazon. So please do. You don't have to read the whole book, just like a first chapter, a middle, and the last chapter, you'll get the gist of it.
And before I forget, check out the link to George's new website down in the description, and also you can buy me a coffee, right? Okay, now that that's out of the way, continue, George, with the book and the example here.
Yeah, well, we need a pay account that is like buy me a case of beer.
You can do that. You can make it. You can name it. I think anything you want within reason.
Yeah.
Or there are options. I just left it on default.
I'm just saying what I'm going to do if we can, have our own.
If we had our own, we should make it offshore. But in any case, let's not talk about financial stuff because this is a comedy show. Now let's talk about the joke of the American educational system and the fact that it's occupied by these blue creatures. I mean teachers.
Yeah. So let me get on with this. So Alan Bloom in Closing the American Mind started talking about the postmodernists or Frankfurt School people started moving into the soft philosophical and social sciences that had not yet adapted objective measures and standards. So that's what he's complaining about. And then he also talks about they don't teach Plato and Aristotle government form theories and the rise and fall of governments anymore. So now the classical questions, and I'll leave that out because the classical questions are addressed in the third section of this slide set, which is going to take us a long time to get there because it's a lot of ground to cover. So
Yeah, I just checked the second part. The second part of the slide set is about 20 pages or so, and we are known 30, I think it was, and we are known. Yeah, we're known to take at least an hour per 10 pages, and our aim is to get 10 pages done today. And we're 10 minutes in, and we haven't even covered the intro. So keep going, George.
Anyway.
We're right on track. We're right on track. Keep going, George.
Yeah. So anyway. For the third time now, I'm trying to explain Alan Bloom here. Let me get through this, please. So he was talking about the leftists moved into the philosophical and social sciences that had not yet adapted objective measures and standards. And that was in 1988. So as the Frankfurt School came to the United States and really entrenched itself in the 40s and 50s, they started taking the civil rights era and the anti-Vietnam era protest eras. They started getting into the philosophical and social sciences and taking it over by the 1980s. So when Yuri Bezmenov, and I say this just about every video, when he's talking about the demoralization of America in the mid to 1980s, it was already fait accompli by the time he was speaking. People keep on thinking it's something that the Russians are doing today. No, it's by 1990 or 88 is when he published his book. It was already fait accompli then. People need to fully understand that. So then Tobias Kosmidas are talking about how come the rest of the physical engineering and biological sciences has nice, logically coherent, seamless theories that all interoperate, and the social sciences are chaos. All right, I want to do that to introduce why my UBT fixes it. And yes, it's 2024, and it's been completed for years and years, but I've been in Iraq, Afghanistan. I haven't been able to push it. And when I send my papers up to, some of the major journals to get published, the problem then is they use the peer review process not to publish it. But wait a second, there's these professors talking about they need these methodologies integrated, but they don't know how to do it. I'm suggesting the answer. Now, why aren't you publishing my work? Anyway, the game's rigged. Everybody already knows that. So this is how I came by. Everything is rigged way more than people think. And the reason why I bring that up, it was on your website or my old Telegram website, somebody brought up the peer review process and now it's rigged. Somebody wrote a quick story on that. It might have been over a year ago, but it was a long time ago. That might have been 2 years ago now. But anyway, it was discussed on our Telegram channel a long time. So the other thing is, as the social sciences become more leftist, they also become, since the coeducational program started in the late 60s, they became more and more female dominated. So they went from trying to become objective to much more subjective. Meanwhile, the math heavy tech and engineering courses remained 99.9% male. So if you're a male and you want to meet a female, if she starts spouting this woke nonsense, the men go, yes. So they can have relationships. So that's why a lot of the engineering and IT departments, the people will say that
you're saying the leftists took over the universities not only by inserting female leftists, but by these female leftists propagating their leftism through the bedroom?
I know that will shock you.
I know, I'm shocked, just like last time. I cannot believe it. So almost like a honeypot, but much, much more complicated.
Yes. So, yes.
I would wager to bet that there's even societies based on this kind of thing. I would wager to bet that there's like secret society. This is a joke, of course. Like we're sitting talking jokes at a bar. This is a bar in front of us. This black little thing. We just don't have drinks because Google and YouTube wouldn't be happy with that. But so we're just chatting at a bar, and this is the joke. that it's most likely a secret society of women who do rituals and get powers.
Oh yeah, they do. They do rituals. All right.
Shall we stick to the real jokes that you can prove are jokes?
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's when you get to the more mathematized stuff. Yes, there are more Republicans in it. Well, we'll see if that doesn't change. Well, we'll see what happens over the next. Well, we'll see what happens come November 5th.
Oh, you want to get into the election stuff now? I was thinking of doing at least some slides before we get into the election stuff. Let's do at least one slide. Come on, George.
Well, no, let's do one or the other because once we start this, I need people to really focus.
We can't really focus. That's the whole point. It's a comedy show. The purpose of the slide set is to quickly, in quotes, air quotes, explain how the dual independent variable Cartesian style model presented in the previous section was developed by upgrading Seymour Lipset's model presented in his landmark work. Some social requisites for democracy.
Yeah, hold on a second.
1959.
Yeah,
You can't tell people to hold on the internet. I gotta pop up a meme ASAP. How's the U.S. economy doing, George?
It's doing really great. Wrong. All right. I wanted to bring up the slide set on my own monitor.
So you don't have to follow my popping around.
Yeah,
so that people can make the jokes about your shifty eyes and not realize that's why I'm wearing the glasses. Also, stop asking me where you can get these slide sets. Ask George. He has a website. Link in the description. So, George, 42? The answer to everything? Yeah.
All right. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I had to bring up my own slide sets. I should have done that before. But yeah, so he's linking his concept of democracy to certain levels of economic growth to moving less developed countries to more developed countries. So at the end of it, he starts talking about how to use Aristotle's 6 forms of government in whole, but he doesn't have a way to do that yet. It's 1959. That will change as dynamic economic growth theories start to occur, endogenous economic growth theories, exogenous economic growth theories, and then of course you get general equilibrium theories with Arrow-Debreu models, and you have Solo-Swan, heavily integrated complex economic growth theories. So then you can have economic growth rates of change over demographic rates of change, and then that equals more developed countries that tend to have a higher economic growth and lower population growth vis-a-vis less developed countries that tend to have lower economic growth and higher levels of population growth. So that way you get a whole set of macro frameworks that cover the full range of human behavior, and your dependent variables like a water level mark. Whatever your tight versus catastrophically loose wage labor rate is what that continuum dichotomy is. So whatever those economic growth, population growth proportions are, that's your water level. That determines which government form you get and which geopolitical status you get. People don't choose what form of government they get. It's that proportion that determines which government you have. It's not a choice. Once population disparity goes towards catastrophically loose, the income disparity always increases, because if you own a business, your population is growing, your demand is growing, so your profits are going, because your demand is increasing while you're paying less in wages. So that's why income inequality increases under those circumstances. And then that level of income disparity is what determines your government form, because then you no longer have democracy, you have an oligarchy. And then, you've moved out of first world status to something less than first world. So that's why these frameworks are important in that sense. The second sense is the postmodernist movement came in and said everything was subjective. There is no such thing as an objective reality. Well, right there, if you have Aristotle's 6 forms of government and the 4-category geopolitical form model, you have frameworks that cover the full range of human behavior in a macro sense. So right there, you do have an objective reality to start building a model from. So that's why this is so important. And again, 1959, why wasn't my UBT done decades ago? Because the postmodernists came in and abandoned the scientific project in a discipline where they were almost already there in 1959. So this should have been done by 1990 or whatever. And instead, and it's so simple, and but the peer review process is so rigged and everything else is so rigged. Okay, I don't have any problem getting my stuff published in Central Europe. But when I go talk to the people in Prague and Budapest, they want to know what happened to the West. And then you're back to the 7P plan argument and how to change that. Well, the powers that be control it in every single domain, hence the 7Ps, because those are the domains as far as that goes. Yeah, and it's really hard to change things. So anyway, at least the curriculum is done. It's easy. Reversing the 7Ps is going to be a little bit trickier. So here,
you think you'll be able to reverse anything without getting into the education side of it, like without disseminating this and making this like necessary reading, basically?
Yeah, we'll see how that goes.
All right. Make education great again. Upgrading Lipset system. Same or Lipset?
Yeah. Go down to 43 now?
Yeah, we're there. This is 43.
Oh, no, 44.
All right.
So in this one, what's really the takeaway in this slide is his methodology. It's a value neutral bifurcated dichotomy. The value neutral forms are the rule of the one, the rule of the few, and the rule of the many. Then the constructive behavioral dynamic is the proper form of monarchy, aristocracy, and constitutional democracy, or a republic in Plato, if you're going to look at Plato's forms. Plato's forms fit inside Aristotle's forms, but vice versa is not true. So Aristotle's forms of government is controlling. Then the perverted forms are tyranny / despotism, oligarchy, and mob rule democracy. So, the difference is elites in the proper forms invest more in their own society. So therefore your multiplier coefficient goes up, and then your Gini coefficient of income disparity should move more towards equilibrium. Perfect equilibrium would be a 45-degree angle, a 1-to-1 relationship. If you had perfect equality, that can never happen. What you have in a Gini coefficient is in a situation where you have low economic growth, very high population growth, your income disparity basically goes out to like the 95% percentile, and then it zooms up in a logarithmic rate. If you have a middle class, it'll go out to about the 30 percentile and drastically go up and then go up high at the end. But it'll start moving up higher at, say, the 80 and 85 percentile. So right now, if you have lower economic growth and higher population growth, your Gini coefficient will move accordingly. It will go all the way out to the end and then jettison up, signifying that, the top 5% have, 90% of the wealth or whatever, which is the situation where that's occurring in the West. So here with that value neutral form with a constructive versus destructive dichotomy that merges with the virtuous and vicious cycles in economic theory on one side in the macro sense, but on the micro side, all the personality theories are also in a constructive destructive dynamic, and they have a core periphery methodology. The core human behavior is what all humans do, and then the periphery is how the constructive behavioral dynamics do things differently than the destructive behavioral dynamics. The destructive behavioral dynamics, if you put it in economic game theoretic terms, the constructive behavioral dynamics are all positive sum relationships, gradations thereof. The negative forms are either zero sum extractive, one-sided relationship forms, or negative sum sabotage, where a narcissistic personality disorder, cluster B, or a sociopath, cluster A, they either rule something or they ruin it. So it's either zero sum where they rule it for themselves, or they ruin it in negative sum sabotage. So now you have a correlation.
Time out. I have to. It's a comedy show.
Let me finish.
Fine. Okay, fine.
You have a correlation of constructive versus destructive behavioral dynamic theories across the micro and macro social sciences. When you link the dependent variable of economic growth, population growth proportions to the 4-category geopolitical form model, you have a resource constraint model that also has a vicious versus virtuous economic cycle, constructive versus destructive dynamic to it. So now you can use that to put the resource constraint ratio over to the behavioral models. So you have a constructive versus destructive relationship on an XY axis, and then you have a resource constraint ratio on a Z axis. Actually, you can do the axis differently, but you get a 3-dimensional model out of this. So it goes into a Cartesian model. So this could have been decades ago. All the pieces of the puzzle were there. I just put them together, and I still put them together a decade ago. But we have everything's rigged. So anyway, go to the next one. So that's the integrative methodology. That's the big thing out of that one. It integrates with psychology. It integrates with economics. So go to the next slide set.
No, I refuse to. Don't tell me what to do. 3 macro forms. The value neutral low to high consensus scale is placed into a 4-category system below to include insights from the Pareto, Mosca, and Michaels thought lineage, particularly Michaels' iron law of oligarchy, and to correlate the geopolitical forms. Take us through this table, George, because I read this, but these are just words. They mean nothing to me. They have no comedic value at all.
Okay, so Aristotle's value neutrals forms are a low to high consensus scale. His rule of the one, rule of the few, rule of the many. It's a low to high consensus scale. How many people participate in your government? So the Italian political power theorists around the turn of the century with Pareto, Mosca, and Michels, we're talking about how many people actually participate in the ruling class. So there is no such thing as a real autocrat, because they really depend on a small group of experts and military leaders and police officials to maintain order in the system. So they maintain controls. They need gun carriers and some experts to make some things happen. and the experts could be the oligarchs that control the businesses. And yes, instead of discouraging monopolies, duopolies, and oligopolies, they encourage it, because the more oligarchs you have, they have control over their sectors, then it's the easiest to control them. But when you do that, you have a consensus scale. So there is no such thing as a real rule of the one. It's just a smaller consensus scale. A rule of the few, you'll have fewer monopolies, more duopolies and oligopolies. But then what the guy is trying to do, he's trying to disperse power so they can't gang up on him. So it's a more stable system, an oligarchy is. So on that basis, Michel wrote his iron law of oligarchy is, if there's too many people involved in the consensus scale, it can become unstable one way. And if it becomes too few, then the leader is constricting power to the point where where the leaders can turn against them real quick. So there's a balance between an autocrat and a mob rule democracy, where the stable point is oligarchy. So that's the basis of where all these political power theorists in Italy, it basically expounds on why Aristotle's 6 forms of government, that low to high consensus scale, it really defines how it works. So the thing to do is, yes, read Plato's Republic, read Aristotle's 6 forms of government, and then become familiar with the Pareto, Mosca, Michel's thought lineage. And also, if you're, well, never mind. You can throw a guy named Gentile in there also, writing about in the same time period. Okay, so then you're relating the rule of the many to few, the intermediate levels, rule of the few or the very few, or the rule of the few and the very one. You're correlating them to a tight wage labor market, a moderately loose wage labor market, a loose wage labor market, and a catastrophically loose wage labor market. So again, you got your consensus scale, Aristotle's 6 forms of government, related to a tight versus catastrophically loose wage labor rate scale. And then it correlates to first world countries, second world countries, third world countries, or fourth world failed states. So that's how these frameworks correlate. Yeah, go to the next one.
George, should we call this the Halloween special, considering it's going to air on Halloween?
If you want to.
The scary slides of George.
All right. Well, yeah.
I mean, you're scary with some of the stuff that you're putting out here. That it was all out in the open, and
yeah,
nobody did it.
All right,
nobody got it.
Let's go to the next. So this is Cold War issues of the developing world.
Cold War.
The book I have pictured on the right is Stephen Ambrose, Rise to Globalism. It's a very good book, I think. Actually, several different professors recommended that to me. Stephen Ambrose is more famous for being the biographer for Eisenhower. He's an Eisenhower expert of, well, World War II ended, Truman became president, then Eisenhower was president for 8 years, and there was a lot went on during that. The Cold War started, obviously. So he's also known for being the author of the Band of Brothers, the books that turned into the TV show.
That's a good TV show. Recommended.
Yeah,
that was a miniseries before miniseries existed, basically, with that guy from Friends doing his first serious role. But in any case, what were you saying?
So, it was during a time frame where modernization was a big deal, because they didn't want communism to go into the developing world where there was anti-colonial sentiment. So they didn't want colonialism to be overtaken by communism, because that was when the domino theory started to become started taking effect because of the wars the French Indochina Wars, where the Viet Cong wanted to, and the Pathet Lao wanted to replace the French colonialism with communism. Now, is it real communism? Well, no, it was more nationalism. Real Marxism. Marx wanted the proletariat and Mao form of Marxism was to get the peasants to overthrow the system. Marx's original system idea was for the proletariat to overthrow the system, but it was for the proletariat to unite across Europe and overthrow the oligarchs and then become one big communist Europe, with Marx in charge, of course. Mao's idea was to get the peasants to basically overthrow the warlords, we'll call it, and take over the government and then create a more equal government. That was their idea. Same thing with Ho Chi Minh, of how to get the peasants to in Vietnam and in Laos and later on Cambodia to overthrow French rule and kick the French out. That's what they wanted. So in each one of those things, it's not an international movement. They actually separated into nationalistic movements, which, again, Marx predicted that they would become, or his hope was that they would become integrated across ethnicities, religious and linguistic lines. Well, what Mearsheimer always talks about, because Mearsheimer graduated from West Point, spent 10 years in the Air Force or something, or 6 years in the Air Force at least, to finish out his commission. And he saw that fascism ended because everybody ganged up on it. And then communism failed too, because it didn't work the way Marx originally planned. And where did he see that? He saw it in Vietnam when he was there as an Air Force officer.
And so also maybe because everybody also ganged up on it too. I mean, communism.
Yeah, we'll go into that later. That's the geopolitical side. I'm just throwing this in there because it's just a convenient place to throw in Mearsheimer's. Where did Mearsheimer get these ideas? So then he was like, oh, okay, well, you have liberalism. Liberalism is also going to end as an ideology when it runs into the buzzsaw of realism and nationalism. And so he's been talking about that since the war in Ukraine, that the United States is overextending itself, and eventually this will not work out so well. So that's where this comes from.
You triggered me now. You said Ukraine. So we got to talk about Ukraine. You want to talk about a safari in Ukraine?
Yeah, go ahead.
This came across my feed the other day. Canadian flag and foreign weapons. The video of liquidated mercenaries in the Berdyansk region. That's Russia proper, for those that are paying attention. We've got Safari vid number 1. This is a video that surfaced later. This was filmed by Thermal. This is what happened. And then the aftermath is that first actual post that I saw, which is here. And I actually wanted to get your take on all this ammo and stuff, because you're like a resident ammo guy after that Trump assassination attempt, the debacle and debrief. Yeah. This is a lot of fucking ammo, wouldn't you say? Plus, if you pay attention, as we'll see, there's also
I got more than that here.
No, but I'm saying for 3 guys on a safari, you don't have more than this. These are thermobaric. These are thermobaric, and then this seems like Semtex, or maybe you can correct me. But
those
this
are just plates. Those are Magpul PMag magazines.
Canadian flags with love notes from Bambi and others.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, just stop. I'll just analyze the first one. Just
hold on. Yeah. Let me freeze it on the correct frame. 1 second. There we go.
Okay. So there you have saw belts on the. That's the ammo on the in the center. You have you have M16, M4 magazines. AR-15 magazines on the left. Yeah, some of them are metal. A lot of those earlier pictures, they were using Magpul PMags. And then, okay, yeah, somebody's boot there, it looks like. Yeah, go to the next one.
That second guy's got cowboy boots. Those look like cowboy boots. Is it my imagination?
Yeah, you have, I'm not sure. You have different types. Okay, there you have 40 millimeter grenades. For the grenade launchers. Yeah, there you have Semtex.
It's like a kilo of Semtex. Also, why are you Americans using kilos for Semtex? Is this because it's like came off a European base, so they had to like measure it in kilos? Why is it not in pounds of Semtex? Is it normal to use kilos of Semtex or pounds of Semtex?
Oh, for NATO standards, they use kilos. They don't use pounds.
Oh, for
that
real?
Way, no matter, yeah, it's just to make it easier. So when you do NATO training, you don't have to train people in a whole bunch of different stuff. You can just train everybody, to one standard. Because otherwise, you're just going to working in the metric system is so much easier. So even in the Army, they stopped training people in
how un-American of you
in minutes of angle, and they started training snipers in mil radians instead, because it's easier to calculate your distances of a known target size with your crosshair reticles, in a scope, easier for range estimation. Yeah, using a laser to do a exact range determination, and then either dialing in your scope adjustments or using your Christmas tree Horus type reticles. If you flash a laser at night, everybody that has night optical devices, nods, are going to see that laser and then start shooting back at the origin of the laser. So sometimes you just want to range a target. If it's a known size target, you can use the hash marks in the scope to determine the distance. If you know the size of the target.
The standard Russian reticles have the same thing. I think it's 1.8 meters, which is like basically a human at yay distance, and like 2.5 meters, which is basically a tank at X distance, and then they have like the like sliding size. I'll maybe try and find it while you talk about some other stuff. But is this here on the top right? Is this cordite?
No, well, it's det cord.
Det cord, huh?
Yeah.
So this was definitely a sabotage team, huh?
Yeah. So you can. I mean, if Joshua was here, he could. He's an EOD guy. He could explain this much better than I can.
All right. But maybe we'll talk with Joshua someday.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he is an expert in this. I mean, that's what he did. So, yeah, you can either explode something either with another explosion or electricity.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to have electronic switches there. I saw them the other day when I was looking at it. They had electronic switches, detonation devices. So yeah, you got to have a battery connected to a switch connected to a battery, connected to the det cord, connected to the explosives, basically. That's pretty much how they do it. Yeah, it'd be better if Joshua was here and could do it from an expert. But yeah, I mean, I've seen people.
That's the video. That's the video. This is the character, and the next day, this popped up on my feed, which is this guy. That was one of the characters who went on safari. And the piece of news is this photo op is they're going to Gaza to help the Gazans evacuate the poor people there or something. That was the photo op. So, yeah, that guy was found on the Russian border.
Wait a second. Wait, show that face again.
Why? Do you think you know him?
All right. Yeah, thanks.
We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. All right.
It's Halloween. Yeah. So these are like Halloween jokes.
It's something that could be interesting.
It's a Halloween joke. We'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
Let's pop up some German press.
We're sorry for his unfortunate demise.
Yes. No. As the Russians say, you come by the sword, you die by the sword. This is the German press. Hold on. No. Now I'm telling you to hold on. You told me to hold on earlier. Now I'm telling you to hold on. It's like quid pro quo.
I'm butthurt now.
It's okay. I can mute you if it makes you feel better. In any case, I just wanted to pop this up because I think it's hilarious. The German press continues to admire the success of the Russian armed forces at the front and states that in this week alone, the Russian troops have captured 196 kilometers squared, which is not a little. So, yeah. You want to go back to your slides, George? We've got about 4 or 5.
Actually, just stay right there for just a second.
Go on.
Okay, and this is another one of my pet peeves. Okay, maybe I wasn't very good at explaining things, when I was first on the Felix Rex shows, but I got better. Thank God. I've been working, brother, and yeah, the more I present, the better I get. That's just a learning curve. But yeah, go back to that map real quick. What I've been talking about, because they keep on saying Putin attacked for no reason. Okay.
Link.
Yeah, it's so aggravating because and I'm not even necessarily, big on either side. I just want people, my idea is for people to look at stuff in objective game theoretic realities. The goal, what the sea powers had, they controlled the maritime checkpoints through the Cold War because they had a bigger navy, than either the Germans in World War II or the Russians after World War II. So they controlled all the maritime choke points. So once the Cold War ended, the deal then is the natural extension of the containment theory is to then take over the riverine and the terrestrial choke points. So if you go back, you want to block in all their ports to stop shipping trade. But since most of the trade goes through pipelines and railroads, you want to stop that too.
George, I don't have all the maps loaded. You can't do this to me. And we've done this so many times before. I'll just link the old videos to you talking about how they're choking in Russia from all sides, and they've been doing it since like ye olde English timies. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they even employed the Turks to help them in the Crimean War. Should we go back to history and realize why Paris bistros are called bistros, or did we discuss that already? You know what I'm saying?
I was going straight through the slide set. You diverted to this stuff, so we're talking about it.
All right. Now we're moving. This was 46. I know. It's a comedy show. I have to keep people on their toes. Yeah. 47. The Cold War political, economic, and geopolitical strategies. We'll do this, and we'll do another one. And we'll call it an episode.
All right.
Special.
If that's what you want to do.
The Halloween special. No comment. Anyway, go on, George. Give us an outline.
Yeah, so the modernization theories, again, we're talking about upgrading Lipsitz, some social requisites for democracy is what we're talking about here. The reason why modernization theory came up to be such a big deal in the late 40s is they had to rebuild They had to rebuild Western Europe so it would not become a vacuum that communism would fill. So that's why they used the Marshall Plan to rebuild Europe, move the NATO in Europe, so to keep Russia to keep the Soviet Union out of Europe, to keep the Germans down in Europe, and then propel France and Germany to control Europe is basically what the idea there is. And then rebuild the first island chain in, Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, the Philippines, to contain Russia, and then later China after Mao Zedong defeated Chiang Kai-shek and all the other warlords to take over China and turn it communism.
Wait, so you said you reminded me of keeping Germany down, as in Europe down, as in that's the plan, with Nord Stream and whatnot, which we discussed ad nauseum millions of times. I just wanted to pop up this piece of news that came up just today, just before we started recording. The German economy is about to get annihilated. Let's see if I can get this on screen. German car manufacturer Volkswagen, for the first time in its 87-year history, is planning to close production sites at its home market. 3 manufacturing plants will be closed, etc., etc. You can read it on screen. George?
Yeah,
how big is the "I told you so" sign in front of your house? How big is the sign? Tell me the truth.
We've been talking about that on Telegram. Yeah, it's Volkswagen. How many companies are involved in that? Because obviously you have Volkswagen, Porsche, Audi, but you have Skoda. They own Ducati too. What else do they own? A whole bunch of subsidiary, parts manufacturers involved in that. It's a huge conglomerate. It's not just Volkswagen Cars itself. It's a whole bunch of other stuff. So yeah, you're talking about, because they either had to get Russian natural gas to stay in business, or they got to move their factories.
So, we discussed this like a year and a half ago, I think, more.
Yeah, and I still got those. I'm going to redo those slide sets, and because we really need to go over them again since so few people watched them, and I need them for other purposes too. But yeah, so Rostow started his modernization theory plan in the late 50s, early 60s, and that's what started economic growth theory. And Lipset was in the National Security Advisory Team, and so was Rostow, and a guy named oh boy, now I'm drawing a blank. The guy that started NSC 68, Ralph Nitze, or Nitze was his last name, Nitze, started a program over at Johns Hopkins right in DC about how to formulate these economic growth theories. And it became NSC 68, which became extended the Marshall Plan to really developing our allies in Western Europe and the first island chain, and then also developing the third world. So in it, you want to go over through the 5 steps of traditional society, build roads, railroads, water, sewer, electricity, hydroelectric dams, as much infrastructure as you can. Then you can start moving joint ventures to build structure, which is physical plants. You want to move low-wage, labor-intensive businesses there first, like textiles, and then start building other types of manufacturing facilities there to turn raw materials into consumer products in the third world as much as possible. So you want to move people through the traditional society to the transitional stage where you're adding the infrastructure, to a takeoff stage where you're adding the manufacturing facilities, the structure. And then you want to drive to maturity. So you want to put more business sectors there and build them out, and more competition. So that would be your drive to maturity stage. If that keeps on going, you have a virtuous economic cycle. Then you get a period of high mass consumption. If your economic growth is high and your population growth is low, you're going to have a high wage labor equity rate and higher living standards. So that's what you're trying to do there. All right, next slide.
We're going good. We've got another, 4 minutes to the hour? And you've got another 3 slides to go to cover the 10 slide target we had for today.
Right. So
if you want to kick it into 4th gear, be my guest.
Yeah. So you have Lipsitz, prerequisites for democracies. Then you had with Rostow, he was a national security advisor for, he came in at the end of the Eisenhower administration and stayed as national security advisor for JFK and LBJ. And then he became a university professor. Well, he ended up finishing out his career till he died at the University of Texas. So he was one of the founding fathers of economic growth theory. Yeah, go to the next one. Page 49. We're going to go to, what slide are we going to stop at today?
50, 52, somewhere there.
Okay. So Lipset discussed the possibility of expanding Aristotle's 6 forms of government. Already showed how to do that and how to relate it to Solo Swan models. Well, actually, we're going to get to the Solo Swan models. No, I did it in the last. I did it in the last, in the earlier shows that we did.
Yeah, so we've done it before.
When I put the models together, I started using Harsanyi's criteria because he was noticing that the soft social sciences weren't progressing enough. So he was in his 1960. This is a 1971 publication of a compilation of his 1960s works. His 1960 works in, I can't remember the different publications, a whole bunch of different academic journals. But this, in his 1960 article, he's talking about laterally integrating. He mentions evolutionary theory, psychological theory, sociology, politics, and different economic theories. He wants to laterally integrate them, but he doesn't know how. But he talks about the need to do it. His 1966 article, he talks about it should be a 2-force model. He recommends getting the 2 forces as economic gain from Anthony Downs' Economic Theory of Democracy, written in 1957, and Thorstein Veblen's Pursuit of Social Status as the 2 basic human motivations. So it's economic gain and social status. So that correlated with the pursuit of self-survival and survival of the species in Darwinian evolutionary theory, and the pursuit of resources and mates in anthropological theory. They're all about the same kind of motivations, and I use those things to operationalize Heidegger's being and time. So that's how you get everything down to a series of 2-force models. His 1969 paper was the other social sciences think that if you get somebody elected and they choose a particular policy course, a course of action, that a whole bunch of things fancifully, occur favorably together. And he's like, no, that's not true. Linear programming logic takes precedence. You can only maximize one thing at the expense of other variables. So nothing escapes that basic algebraic logic. So he wanted all the social sciences to start using Pareto-style models. So with my model, I can do that because, if you're accelerating economic equity through redistribution, you're slowing down economic growth. You're causing inflation. So the thing is, you need to limit population growth to replaceable rates because we're below replaceable rates now. So if you emphasize one thing, it can't be over or under. It's got to be, if you want to maintain population, it's got to be 2.5 kids per couple, right? So you can't fall below that, and you still need high investment. But if your population increases too much, then you're going to have wage labor disequity for a different reason. So here's your different economic growth theories on that. Again, I didn't invent them. I'm just bolting them together. They already existed. So yeah, we can kind of all right. Yeah. So this is where we end up going through it. We went through it at the end of, well, we went through it to the first section, just what the frameworks are. So you're trying to move third world countries that are underdeveloped. Well, as we were developing, some of them fell back into failed states for a whole bunch of different reasons. Robert Gurr wrote a book in the 1970s of Why Men Rebel. He says as they start to take off, some people are included, some people are not included. So the unincluded start to rebel. If they go towards socialism, then they take the money out of investment, they give it away like Santa Claus, and then the country collapses again for a different reason. So you want a Pareto optimal model of how to move countries back to a certain stage of development, and then you increase the suffrage rate. You basically have a conversation going on between Seymour Lipset, Ted Robert Gurr, and then the different economic growth theories. So that was the conversation during the 70s and 80s. I always read, I tried to get new editions of Wilbur and Jameson's books, The Political Economy of Development and Underdevelopment, because they upgrade them every couple of years, or they used to back when Wilbur was still alive. They would take the most famous economic different kinds of growth theories and put them into one book so you can read them in one spot. So it goes over, a lot of them are Marxists, a lot of them, a lot of the things that they proposed didn't work. So everything comes back to supply and demand economics. So that's why I built my model that way, because gimmicks don't work. Population growth and economic growth rates on basic supply and demand principles, and people pursuing resources and mates, economic gain and social status. You have to create the conditions where they can compete most competitively and positive sum relationship dynamics. So that means, limit monopolies and duopolies and oligopolies, and have perfect competition to the extent that that's possible. Certain utilities like telephones and electricity have to be state regulated monopolies because of the cost of the infrastructure is too much. You can't really duplicate it. Okay, that's changed with telephone technology, because now you're no longer using wires to everybody's home. You're using radio signals, but still, you still have, you're replacing copper wire going to people's homes with fiber optics, but those kinds of industries still tend towards monopoly, duopoly, or oligopolies, or they really just tend towards monopolies and duopolies because the infrastructure cost is just way too high. So some businesses you can't move towards perfect competition, but to businesses that you can move towards perfect competition, you should do so. Then you get, let's just stop it here, because we already did cover what the frameworks were. So we can just pick that up. We'll go over the frameworks again and then get into the inclusion of the psychological theories later on, in the next video.
Oh, wait. Okay, now you can hear me. I muted myself when I was coughing earlier, off screen. Yeah. So, yes. Thank you, George. I was going to suggest we call it recording here. And I just wanted to pop up some things and check who actually watches this to the end. And maybe people will comment if they see this. So Wikipedia editors officially deem Trump a fascist. Your take on this piece of news, George?
Yeah, everybody's a fascist. They just call everybody a fascist. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, as far as Islamophobe, I don't know, misogynist, fascist. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
This being the Halloween special, this is from Inessa S, formerly on YouTube. Halloween costumes being sold in Ukraine are of military conscription officers. What are you wearing for Halloween, George?
I'm not sure yet.
I always go as a mummy if I go. It's costume falls apart halfway through the night. You're the only one looking normal. Also, shout out to Tropical Storm Kong Ray heading towards Taiwan, because we all know it's a conspiracy that anyone can control the weather. And regarding your stuff that you were mentioning about two genders, I had this, but I didn't want to interrupt you. The B in LGBTQ means there are only two genders. Until we meet again. George, we'll be back very soon. Everybody who stuck around to the end, leave a comment about one of these memes so that I know that you watched it to the end. Yeah, so people who didn't feel jealous and want to watch and learn stuff from George in our funny little show here. George, thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I'm
everyone
very patient.
We'll be back. All right. Peace out, everyone.